What's up, everybody? Happy Sunday. Welcome to The Sweat, presented by DraftKings Sportsbook on Bally Sports Network. I'm one of your hosts, Jessie Coffield, helping to bring you 1 hour of DFS and sports betting advice and analysis from the best in the biz, leading you all the way up until kickoff of the 1 p.m. games. And guys, here at DraftKings, we love to help you make $1 million. So here's a look at one of this week's featured DFS contests, the 4.5 million Fantasy Football Millionaire. So get this, for just a $20 entry fee, take a shot at $1 million first prize that will also get you a seat into the DraftKings Tournament of Champions, which is going to take place at the end of the season, and give you an opportunity at yet another $1 million prize. That's all part of 4.5 million in total prizes, so go check out that contest in the DraftKings lobby. So throughout this program, we're going to be sharing the best fantasy advice to help you make the best of your Week 2 lineups, right? That's what we're here for. But first, we're going to get started looking at the sportsbook side of things. And here to do just that is my co-host. Take it away, Emerson Lotzia.
Jessie Coffield, we would not be here without you. Thank you so much. I got 3 dudes here who eat, sleep, and breathe football. 3 DraftKings contributors, Steve Buchanan, Reed T. Fowler, Julian Edlow. This segment is called Early Edge, so I want your initial thoughts, guys, on your favorite bet on this slate. You start us out, man.
Yeah, look, it's been flip-flopping all throughout the week.
That's
it looks like
good.
As of now, but that's okay. The Patriots -5.5 going up against the Jets. What did the Jets show anybody last week that makes them think that this game is going to be even remotely close? And not anything that I saw, Zach Wilson was under pressure on 51% of his dropbacks last week. Bill Belichick had a week to prepare for this game. What do you think they're going to do to Zach Wilson? Make him uncomfortable as possible in the pocket, make him try to shuffle out of the pocket, and then on offense, we all know about all the weapons that they got all season long. If it wasn't for a couple of boneheaded plays that they made at the end of week 1, they could have won last week. I think they do here against the Jets. That spread just doesn't make sense to me. So absolutely the Patriots -5.5.
And now it's -6 on the DraftKings
That's
Sportsbook.
fine, no problem.
Okay,
No
great.
problem.
I mean, how much sense does it make to you? It makes no sense to this dude.
Nope.
Yeah, I'm with Steve here. The Jets, I think they're getting better. That's a good sign for the Jets, right? They're getting better. Mekhi Becton, losing him, I think, is going to be huge. And to Steve's point, that's going to change the line when you get an offensive lineman of Becton's stature to go down. So I'm in agreement with Steve here. Good start.
Are you actually going to agree with Steve? You two never agree, for anyone out there who is new to the program.
But they're best.
I do agree with Steve. Actually, Emerson, I'm going to maybe even steal your host role a little bit here because it transitions.
Have at it.
It transitions right into my best bet. I agree with Steve so much so that the Patriots are one piece of my money line parlay for my best bet for week 2.
What a segue, dude.
Actually,
A real
it
pro.
connects to you as well, Emerson, as a Jaguars fan, because I am fading the god-awful Jaguars with my Denver Broncos, New England Patriots money line parlay. I don't care if it's square. We had veteran odds maker Dave Sharapan on the Unreasonable Odds podcast, Steve and I, on Thursday. I told him my bet. He said, I asked him how this one doesn't get to the window. He says, all these money line parlays, something usually goes wrong. I don't see something going wrong with this one. That's what I like to hear. The Patriots are going to get so much pressure on Zach Wilson. It is a, first road game for Mac Jones, yes. The Jets don't start anybody in the secondary that was higher than a 5th-round pick. This is going to be a cushy spot for Mac Jones. And then on the other side, are the Jags going to get better in their first home game? They're not quite as bad as last week. Yes, they are. But that Denver defensive line getting pressure on Lawrence, the Broncos being able to run the ball on the Jags, I think this one is a spot where both probably cover the 6, but keeping it clean, moneyline parlay, Broncos, Pats. Get me to the window.
What? Go ahead. Just apologize now. Go ahead.
Look, the Jaguars, they're a fun team. They're going to be a fun team to watch, right? Because we want to see what happens with Urban Meyer, with Trevor Lawrence. He's a great prospect, right? Trevor Lawrence is going to be a solid quarterback, but to Julian's point, if you look at that offensive line, it's going to struggle against this defense. Not only are the front 7 are going to wreak havoc on the Jaguars' offensive line, this Denver secondary is probably one of the best units in totality in the NFL, right? So you have to also consider how are they going to score points on a Denver defense. Teddy Bridgewater is going to game manage. He's a solid pocket passer. Jaguars can put some pressure on a guy like Teddy Bridgewater, but I don't think it's gonna work. I do like this this parlay from. I'm agreeing with these guys too much.
Yeah, you really are. That's not the point of this segment either.
No.
You guys are supposed to fight each other.
Something's
But when
bound
you're
to go
all
terribly
smart, you're
wrong
all
today.
going to agree on very smart things. It does seem like it's the money line, not the spread. But it does seem like that spread for the Broncos is a hurdle, an easier hurdle to clear when that's doable.
Yeah, and you look at too, like with Teddy Bridgewater under center, he was one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the league last year. Not really much pushback coming from this Jaguars secondary. I think these guys covered it pretty well. So not to waste time here, but I'm in agreement with Julian. But I will say, there's probably going to be some disagreements with the next person that's on.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yep,
And
I
that's
think so.
you.
There we go. And you gotta get some energy. You gotta get some emotion
Bring
in
it.
this first segment. Dallas Cowboys. I'm usually not on the Cowboys side. They're a very public team to bet on, so these numbers are a little skewed. But Dallas money line right now presents the best value, I think, if you're taking money line bets. Like money line parlays that Julian mentioned and he laid out are fine. But if I'm getting plus money on a Dallas team that took the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to the last seconds, basically, of winning that game outright in Tampa, I do think getting Zach Martin back, losing DeMarcus Lawrence on the defensive line for the Cowboys is going to hurt, but getting Zach Martin back and having Zeke Elliott not have to get into so many pass blocking situations, letting him control the ball, control the clock, I actually do think that Dallas Cowboys money line against the Chargers on the road, a lot of stuff that are red flags for these guys probably, I think it hits.
You were the one saying
gets
there's
to
going to be
shoot
some
down first?
disagreement here.
Well,
Go ahead.
so he's right that there is some value on obviously the plus money bet.
Good
With
job,
that
buddy.
said, the loss of Lawrence cannot be overstated. This is somebody who had 13 sacks over the last 2 years, and now they're going to give Justin Herbert a clean pocket. Let me let you in on something. When Justin Herbert has a clean pocket, all he does is make completions. Last season with a clean pocket, 77.7% adjusted completion percentage, 18 of his 31 touchdowns, and 7.1 yards per attempt. Those numbers are from last year. This Cowboys secondary has nobody to stop any of the weapons on the Chargers. The Cowboys will absolutely be able to hang. There's no doubt about that. But in the end, I think the Chargers just have too much, and they'll have no pressure on Justin Herbert. He's going to carve the secondary up today.
Okay, which side do you fall on?
I don't know if the Cowboys do have what it takes to hang. I love the Chargers. If we
They
asked
have
for
great weapons. That's the only thing that you can say.
if we asked for second best bets, my second best bet is Chargers -3. Fade Fowler hashtag. So look, we'll start on the
That's how it
Chargers.
goes,
We'll
but
start on
go
the Chargers side. The Washington defense did take a hit on Thursday night. It's not as good as we thought it was, but the front four, led by Chase Young, is pretty good. So they didn't even get much pressure on Herbert, even though that was a low-scoring grinder game. That's a road win as dogs for the Chargers. Herbert, great game. No Lawrence, there's going to be no pressure. No secondary, easier completions. I don't think the Chargers offense has much of a problem. In fact, I'm probably going to be on that Justin Herbert passing yardage over. Going to the other side of this, though, the Dallas looked good against Tampa thing, I see so many holes in. First of all, Tampa gifted 16 points that could have been as many as 21 to Dallas. That game should have been a blowout. On the second side of that, Tampa has a good defense and gets credit for having a good defense. The secondary is not good. The secondary wasn't good last year. It was dominant in the postseason run, but it was not good overall last year. Now you're going to get a secondary with Derwin James, who graded as one of the best, I think the best by Pro Football Focus, secondary defender in week 1. Lock down Amari Cooper, take him out of the game. You've already got Gallup sidelined. CeeDee Lamb, good guy for player props, good guy for maybe DFS and player props in this game. But I think that Dallas is going to have a lot of trouble in this game. I think the Chargers win this by double digits.
One thing to rebuke, though, Brian Bulaga is out of this game. I think that's going to play a factor. But I mean, Rashawn Slater, their first-round draft pick is solid. So you do like that from the offensive line for the Chargers. Let's not mistake. I mean, I get when you talk about game script and you talk about context of a game in Tampa Bay. Tom Brady and the Buccaneers, I almost said Patriots there. The Buccaneers gave up. It's not like like Dallas was just like falling on the ball.
Yep.
And they created those turnovers as well. So to say that they gifted that game, that defense that we think is going to struggle this year, is not necessarily a huge liability. And look, what did Dallas do last year when this was the same narrative for Dallas' defense? Dak Prescott just goes above and beyond what he has to do. Like, can I say, like, the money line, the value of this is my favorite bet. And let's not mistake, too, last week, both of these numbskulls, their best bets didn't hit.
Oh,
The only one,
that's good.
the
That's
only
good to remind
one, the
people.
only one on this panel, because this panel consists of
More than one
more
person.
than one person, was this guy.
Great.
If you took
I'm
my
actually
bet,
glad
we
you
were
reminded
supposed to
everyone
take
that
it.
This
because
guy's saying take his bet back in August when we're doing our show last week.
And we
That's
cashed,
what he's
and
saying.
we cashed
That's
it.
And this is our
And if we're
first.
talking-
This is our first weekend on Valley Sports Networks too. So I'm glad you reminded everyone at home about that from last
Am I allowed
week.
to keep
There were-
arguing?
No, you're not. Because
Russell, Dak Prescott went 0-5 against the spread last year, if we're talking last year, Dak.
we do have a minute left in this segment. There's been a lot of mention of the Buccaneers already. They're 12.5-point favorites at home. Are they going to cover, guys? That's only the second largest spread on the slate. What do you think?
Look, the Buccaneers are just in an unbelievable smash spot here against the Falcons, who were only able to muster 6 points against the Eagles last week. I don't think that's more of, that's not a positive for the Eagles.
Yeah.
I think that's more of a negative for the Falcons and how that offense was running. They looked absolutely lost on offense. Will they be able to rectify that moving forward? Yes, but this is not going to be the week to do that.
All right, Fowler, who's more likely to cover? The Bucs at home, 12.5 against the Falcons, or you got the Browns 13.5 at home against the Texans?
I'm going on the Bucs side. I'm a 13.5 for the Browns
That is
team.
ridiculous.
Yeah, no one
Browns are usually on the other side of 13.
Right, exactly. No one believes that the Houston Jaguars was a real thing, right? And I get that. And the Browns, when you look at their advantage that they have in the run game and the pass game, or essentially everything over the Houston Texans, I get that. But I'm more confident in Tampa Bay. When Julian talked about those turnovers and Tom Brady, they're gonna clean that up. And I expect them to put up at least 35 plus points in this one. I don't know how the Falcons, with that offensive line, we saw that offensive line, like Steve mentioned in Philly, absolutely terrorize Matt Ryan. What do you think Vita Vea and these guys are going to do? That scares me the most.
It has to be a century since the last time the Browns were favored by this much.
So, let me put it this way. If I'm going to back the Bucs to win that big, it means their offense is clicking. And Reed just said he thinks they put up 35. I would rather bet the Bucs team total over 32.5 than lay 12, 13 points with the Bucs. But if you're telling me I have to take one of these favorites, I will take the Browns. I think they have I'm not going to bet either, but I think they have a better chance to win by 2 touchdowns at home. Coming off a tough loss, they need this win, and the Texans got a win last week unexpectedly to some, and I just think going on the road now, we're going to see the Texans kind of fall back to what we thought they were, being kind of a doormat. I think this could be a 14, 21-point game in Cleveland.
All right, guys, good stuff. First block of the show, it is in the books. Coming up, Steve and Reed are going to unleash their Week 2 hot takes. But first, let's send it over to our friend Pat Mayo as he shares some of his favorite cheap wide receiver plays for Week 2.
I'm Pat Mayo with your Week 2 DraftKings picks, cheap receiver edition, because the expectation this week is you're going to pay for one of these stacks. They're going to be expensive. You might not be able to get up to McCaffrey, Cook, or even Alvin Kamara at this point based on how much you've spent on your stack, so you're probably going to need to save money at wide receiver. That is the most logical drop-down point because there are some pretty good options down in the Week 2 salaries for the main slate on DraftKings. So if we just start at $5,000 and look below, you got Jamar Chase at $5,000. It's a pretty good price. But as we continue to go down, no more Will Fuller. So you have Jalen Waddle again against the Bills in what's probably going to be a very positive passing game script. Not the best option, but still very cheap when it comes down to it. We also have Marvin Jones, $4,700, 6-point dogs at home against the Denver Broncos. Tougher matchup, but there's going to be a lot of garbage time in this game. And even on the other side of the ball, you have Tim Patrick at $4,600. Made an impact filling in for Jerry Jeudy on the outside. Both Patrick and KJ Hamler at $3,800 could find their way into your lineup. No questions asked. They are positive salary savers. Now, all of these guys are definitely not safe. That's why they're down in this pricing range. However, they have substantial upside in all of their spots. And listen, they give you access to all the best players on the slate. So even if you have to take 2 of them, I still think it is worth the significant gamble that goes through them. $4,500, you have Jamison Crowder returning from the COVID-19 list for the Jets. It's not the best matchup against the Patriots, but if you want to attack the Patriots over the field, over the middle of the field, short, easy completions. We saw the way that Zach Wilson favored the tight ends and Braxton Berrios a week ago. That's because no Jamison Crowder was on the field. Those are easy completions. Crowder, a very good slot man. He's really good when he plays. He just doesn't play all that often, and is a very cheap price when it comes down to him as well. As we keep scrolling down the list, listen, Marquez Callaway busted for everyone last week. That's why we suggested you play Deontay Harris in that spot at 1/30th the ownership. Now, no one wants Marquez Callaway, he's still only $4,200 in a much better spot against the Carolina Panthers. You can go back and gamble with him, and maybe he can end up doing the scoring to take away from some of the chalk that is Alvin Kamara in this spot. Just look for different ways to attack with that Saints offense, and it could be Callaway once again at $4,200 a week after he was the ultimate chalk. Everyone wanted to play him. Now, no one wants him. That's not bad news. I mentioned KJ Hamler. You also have KJ Osborne for the Minnesota Vikings, $3,300 in a pass-happy script against the Arizona Cardinals. Cedric Wilson is sort of the obvious low-end choice this week as he's filling in for Michael Gallup. He's going to be very popular, as is Donovan Peoples-Jones for the Browns. You have the Schwartz. He is a bit banged up. Odell, he's not playing, so we're going to get probably over 80% of the snaps for Donovan Peoples-Jones against the Houston Texans this week as a huge favorite with Cleveland. He doesn't need a lot of targets to make fantasy points happen with his extended A-dot down the field, but here's the kicker. He's $3,000. He is the min you can be at wide receiver. He's the best points per dollar projected play of the week, even better than Cedric Wilson. So if you really want to save the money, although you might have to eat a little bit of chalk, not overwhelming chalk, he's not going to be super duper popular. Donovan Peoples-Jones makes almost any lineup work as your last man in, the third wide receiver for $3,000. So I think that is the suggested route this week.
Welcome back to The Sweat, presented by DraftKings on Bally Sports Networks. I'm your host, Jessie Coffield. These two are DraftKings contributors, Steve Buchanan and Reed Fowler. It is time for some very bold plays for this week's slate as the guys give you their best hot takes for today's games and debate with each other respectfully. Gentlemen, take it away. I'm going to stay out of the zone. You guys just do your thing.
I didn't realize this was supposed to be respectfully, so I have a lot of notes I have to clear out for this segment. But no, so we always like to give our hot takes for every week. This is week 2, so we're going to start off with one I already kind of alluded to. I already kind of showed my hand. Reed Fowler was going to be perfectly in a good position to debate this one, but Zach Wilson, I already talked about him. Jets fans out there, not going to like to hear this one. By the time week 2 is over, Zach Wilson is going to have 13 sacks to his name. And why is that? Because the Patriots are going to go over how many times he was sacked last week and sack him 7 times in this game. I already mentioned last week against the Panthers, they had him under pressure on 51% of his dropbacks. More than half the time he was under center, he was scrambling for his career. It felt like they're going to get him 7 times, at least 7 times in this game. And look, Bill Belichick against rookie quarterbacks is 21-6 in his career. All the haters will say, oh, it's because of Tom Brady. Fine, that's perfectly fine, but we can get another win here because how is Zach Wilson going to even let the ball go if he's constantly under pressure? 7 times, Reed Fowler, at least in week 2.
That's a lot. That's a lot, Steve. Look, when you take a look at these defenses, and part of it is what DSTs do you want to play in DFS, I actually like the Jet side for value because, hey, we have another rookie quarterback, and I know everyone thinks this guy is the next Tom Brady, but news alert, only 1 game. I know, look, the Jets don't have the same opposing as an opposing defense as the Patriots potentially have. Kyle Van Noy not in. I don't think that factors into what Steve is mentioning about him getting sacked. What you do like about what Steve's saying is that Zach Wilson, not a lot of rush yards. His rushing prop right now in DK Sportsbook is 13.5. So maybe he's not running as much as we thought he can, but maybe he's not. 7 sacks is a lot. Hard to pick away at what potentially that's going to be like that cap. Could 3 or 4, I guess, could be normal, but that's why it's a hot take, right? Steve's going to 2x what I think it's actually going to be. But again, on the other side, if you're looking at DSTs, not named the Patriots because they are a little bit more expensive, I think the Jets are a fine play in DFS. For defense. Not a great play, but a fine play.
Okay,
but Steve.
If Reed thinks that it's a good play, I'm going to put the Patriots up for 9 sacks.
Okay,
this one,
9
so
sacks.
Just make it a
Put it down.
Okay, give yours.
I'm going to talk about a wide receiver that wasn't on the main slate last week, Steve, and Antonio Brown being the number 1 wide receiver, not just on the Bucs, but overall on this week's slate. If you take a look at what he did, Steve, and look, he was on Thursday. We know what he did. His matchup against Atlanta, it's not going to be like for Atlanta secondary. It's not going to be great. And if we're projecting the Bucs to put up 35 points as a team, 2 touchdowns, over 150 receiving yards, 8 to 9 catches is not out of the realm for someone who looks really good. Doesn't play a ton out of the slot like he used to, but at the same time, like he could, but you could still see him get to that level. If you look at his air yards last year, how many in terms of air yards, how much, the ball traveled to him, he completed, it was a ton. His ADOT, his average depth of target was 19.4 yards, Steve. So when you take a look at what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers want to do, I get it. Mike Evans could be in that squeaky wheel type of game where he could get more points because he did it last week. I do think AB is the number one receiver. Tom Brady knows what he has in AB. Number one overall, had some of the highest air yards and completed air yards last week in week 1.
So just because they used to live together, Reed thinks that they have like this built-in rapport, and he always is going to be going to Antonio Brown. Here's the problem when you're on the Buccaneers. The ball gets spread around a lot. Tom Brady threw the ball 50 times last week against the Cowboys. 4 players had at least 7 targets in that game. One of them was Antonio Brown. There was Leonard Fournette, Rob Gronkowski, and Chris Godwin, all in that mix of 7+ targets. And then, like you said, Mike Evans was only involved on 6 of those, didn't have a great game. Mike Evans, to me, is the guy that Tom Brady likes to go to. He's that constant red zone threat because the guy's like 7'5". Don't quote me on that, but that's what it feels like when he's in the red zone. That's the guy that Tom Brady likes to go to. Can Antonio Brown break off some of those big games? We just saw it last week. Over 120 receiving yards last week against the Cowboys. Gets a great matchup this week against the Falcons. But to say that he's going to be the wide receiver 1, love the call. It's very bold of you. That's what this segment is all about. But I think there's a lot of other receivers in great spots tonight. Just look at that Cowboys and Chargers game. The over-under in that one. Someone like Amari Cooper could easily be that guy. Even someone like maybe Mike Williams could be that guy because of the great matchup that he's in. And Justin Herbert, which we talked about, clean pocket all day, baby. He's going to have all the time in the world to throw. So I appreciate everything that you did here in this segment. Go ahead, you have one more quick point.
3 deep targets to Antonio Brown. Like, is Gronk going to get 2 touchdowns again this week? He could, obviously. Mike Evans has that 1 touchdown, 1 catch for 8-yard type of game in him. What we saw last year from Antonio Brown and Tom Brady, we saw a consistent level of targets. And when you take a look at this game, where else are you going to potentially, like, I get it. He has everyone at his disposal. But I think that production is going to shift more, like Gronk's especially, is going to shift a little bit more towards Antonio Brown. And if we get Antonio Brown 120 receiving yards and 7 catches and a touchdown in week 1, what do you think is going to happen against Atlanta? And especially if you love narratives, 28-3, baby. We saw it in Brady's on Brady's desktop. I don't know. AB could be for another big game.
Okay, don't care about narratives, but I do care about throwing it back to our host, Jessie Coffield.
Oh, why, thank you. The takes were hot. Thanks, guys. We're going to get back to some great DFS and sports betting takes from these guys in a little bit. But first, DallasCowboys.com beat writer Nick Eatman will be joining us throughout the season. He's going to discuss the state of the Cowboys. And right now, Nick discusses the boys' mindset after a tough opening night loss to the Bucs with our own Adam Kaufman.
On the whole, going into a game like that, it's sort of, teams don't like to necessarily have these in week 1, but immediately it's kind of a statement game, obviously, when you're going up against the defending champs. And that was a very winnable game. Again, many would say probably should have won a better kicking game. It's definitely a win. Yeah. So, how much confidence does that instill in the Cowboys, even in spite of the loss?
Yeah, there's not a moral victory at all. And I think that's where that term has been kind of floated out a little bit. And I think once you start accepting losses and getting excited about them, then, you have a problem. But I do think, like you said, there's something to be encouraged about. And I think the advantage that the Cowboys have with versus other teams is other teams can be excited about their wins. There's 16 teams with a win. They can be excited about them. But you still don't know who you really played, and you don't know who you are. I think the Cowboys have the best idea of who their opponent is than anybody else because you're talking about the defending champs that returned everybody, and they've got Tom Brady, which you know exactly what Tom Brady's going to be right now. So, we all know the Bucs are going to be there, and the Bucs are going to be good. And so that it's a very good benchmark game for the Cowboys. There's going to be a lot of teams in week 2 that either won or lost that will flip the script and surprise their fan bases. Cowboys could be one of them if they go and play poorly against the Chargers, but I just think that this is a good sign, an arrow pointing up that if you play like that, you're gonna have a lot more success than you did last year.
Cowboys have the Chargers on the road in week 2. LA coming off a narrow win against Washington in its opener. So what's the outlook for Sunday?
Well, I mean, it's going to be an awesome atmosphere. It's the second time they play at SoFi Stadium, first time with fans, so it'll be a little bit louder, I'm sure. This is the first game with fans for the Chargers at home. So we'll kind of see, but I do think there'll be a lot of Cowboy fans there. I think it'll be a good atmosphere. And like I say all the time, week 2, to me, is always the biggest game of the season, even bigger than game one. And for me, for all teams, if you win, you need to make sure and build off that. You don't want to be in that 1-1 because that gets you to 8-8, Bill, as the Cowboys have done so many times. You want to be in that 2-0. And if you go 0-1, you certainly don't want to go in the 0-2. So I always put a lot of emphasis in the week 2 game, and especially if you lose. And I think that this will be a big one for the Cowboys, but it won't be easy because, I mean, you're facing, quarterback in an offensive passing game, Keenan Allen and Herbert and all those guys. And then Joey Bosa on the other side is probably licking his chops to think whoever they're going to start at right tackle. So it won't be an easy game. But I think if they play the way they played the other night, I think they certainly can win.
Before I let you go, just because you had brought up expectations for this team overall, and the fact that even feeling better about them 0-1 than necessarily 0-0 going into the season, I'm sure you had a week 1 loss penciled in against Tampa. So what was your prediction going into the season for the year?
I had them in around the 10-7 range, and that's probably where I still would have them. I think if you would win that game, you'd be thinking better. Everybody would have been thinking better than 10-7 if you beat Tampa Bay, and that's how close they were. But I mean, 10-7, I'm going to stick with that. I'm not sure if that wins the NFC East. It certainly would have last year, but divisions go like that. It'll when everybody's bad, then there'll be years when everyone's good. And I don't know if we're at that point yet, but I bet we're at a point where they're going to be a lot more competitive this year. So, it's going to be tough. At 10-7 could be a dogfight to get there.
We need to take a quick break here. Some of you will be joining your local baseball pre-games next, but for those of you sticking with us, we're going to have our analysts put their predictions to paper, or whiteboards anyway, as we have them doing Put It on the Board. That's coming up next on The Sweat, presented by DraftKings here on Bally Sports Networks.
DraftKings Sportsbook is an official sports betting partner of the NFL, and during Week 2, new customers can bet $1 on any NFL game and get $200 automatically. Plus, new fantasy players can play free for the $1 million top prize when you make your first deposit. Just download any of the apps and use promo code SWEAT. All right, everybody, you are back. We are back. This is The Sweat presented by the DraftKings. That's it. On Bally Sports Network. Earlier, Jesse told you about this week's featured millionaire contest on DK. But right now, you are looking at one of last week's $1 million winners. This is the lineup that user BL Brown 1994 used to take down a smooth Millie, scoring just north of 222 fantasy points. Check it out using a lower-owned Bengals stack and then hit big with very low-owned plays like Deebo Samuel and Melvin Gordon. So congrats to this human being who now also has a seat at the DraftKings Tournament of Champions in January. And now these guys, these human beings, will try to help out the potential next winner of the $1 million on DraftKings. Here are DK contributors Steve Buchanan, Julian Edlow. There's Jeff Ulrich there. Welcome to the show, buddy. I need you to whip out your trusty whiteboard and markers for Put It on the Board. Use those whiteboards to write down how many fantasy points you think each of the following players will have. You'll all reveal at the same time and make your case. So, Mac Jones, rookie for the Patriots here, dudes. It's going to cost you 5-4. He's visiting the New York Jets. He's going to collide with fellow freshman, fellow rookie, Zach Wilson. So let's see it. 3, 2, 1, show it to me. 18-4 from Jules. What do we got? Steve for 20 and Mr. Ulrich. Okay, you're expecting the most out of Mac and Cheese. Why is that?
I mean, look, we've got the New England Patriots with a 27-point implied team total. I mean, we've got the New York Jets on tap, Emerson. I mean, this is not a good passing defense, as we found out. They made Sam Darnold look very competent last week. They allowed over 7.7 yards per attempt. And look, Mac Jones looked good in week 1. So if we're projecting the Patriots to win this game, to score some points, sure, Damian Harris probably going to get in the end zone, but Mac Jones probably also could throw a couple touchdowns, and I really do like the way he looked. So I'm projecting him for a little bit more than I think the sort of industry average has him at this week, but I think 20-plus points here against a bad secondary in a game where the Patriots are projected to score a lot of points. It's not that outlandish, and he kind of makes for a decent value there at only $5,400.
Yeah, Steve, he's $1,000 more than he was last week. You're expecting around 5 points more than he scored last week, too.
Yeah, look, I mean, there's not really much that, when we've said it all throughout the show, I promise I'm not just here to rag on the Jets, but there really is not much that they have to stop anybody on this Patriots offense. And to that end, though, we could see a lot of Damian Harris in this game, too, as well. I know he might be in the doghouse, as we say, because he did have that fumble last week. But with that said, I feel like the Patriots are going to get to a comfortable lead in this game. I don't feel like that spread really represents how this game is going to go. That's why that's one of my favorite plays overall on the DraftKings Sportsbook. So I think 20 is playing it kind of safe here. Mac Jones should have his way with that secondary, but I don't think he's going to be going, absolutely crazy in this one. So I think 20 is a very safe projection.
Jules, you don't have him cracking 20 points like these other two guys. Why is that?
Yeah, I mean, interesting points about the Patriots' backfield. Harris should be involved again, which takes away some points. Stevenson inactive, so maybe J.J. Taylor gets a little bit involved, who was very good in preseason. I think he's going to be a little bit better than last week. It's also Mac Jones' first road game, but I'm still giving him a bump in points because it's against the Jets and as a larger favorite. So I think he's going to be fine and good enough for the Patriots to win this game. But the Patriots are going to win on defense and running the ball, so I just don't see that much of an outburst. Not that the guys are that much higher than me, and Steve flat number 20. That's weird.
All right, dudes, let's go to the running back department here. Miles Sanders is going to cost you $6.9. Miles Sanders of the Eagles versus San Francisco here. He's the 9th highest priced running back on this slate. Let's see it. Show us the whiteboards. What do you got? All right, 23. Wow. All right, Jeff, I'm just going to start with, I thought it said 4. Sorry, you were cut off there. But Steve, you're expecting the fewest.
Yeah.
Why?
13.4. Look, the 49ers offense took a major blow when they lost their top cornerback and Jason Verrett. That's going to allow Jalen Hurts to go down the field more efficiently and really without much question. We already saw the connection he had with Devonta Smith last week. That's going to be his guy moving forward. It's a legitimate weapon for the Eagles. I just don't really like this spot overall for Miles Sanders. I don't know the need for him. I think this is going to be a close game as the spread indicates here. I do like the Eagles to pull out the win here as underdogs underdogs in this one, but I just don't see Miles Sanders being a big factor in this one. Since 2019, when the Eagles were underdogs, Miles Sanders actually averages only 14 DraftKings fantasy points. That's happened 15 times over that span. He doesn't perform well when the Eagles are underdogs. 13.4 DraftKings fantasy points.
Yeah, Jeff, he had 17 last week. You docking him about 3 points off that. Is that more of a matchup thing because Atlanta's out and 49ers are in?
A little bit, yeah. I also just don't think Miles Sanders, like Steve, is like going to find the end zone much this year. He's got a rushing quarterback in Jalen Hurts. They've got added some weapons in Devontae Smith. And then you do look at the matchup. San Francisco really does project as what we call a funnel to the pass defense. They've got a great D-line. They weren't great against the rush last week, but now Verrett is out, like Buchanan mentioned. And they weren't really good against the pass last week defending against tight ends. And Jalen Hurts has Dallas Goedert to throw to in the red zone. Again, this just isn't a spot where Miles Sanders is going to catch a lot of passes because Jalen Hurts doesn't dump it off much. He just takes off with his legs. So I don't expect much to change. I think this is kind of a projection you should have for Miles Sanders most weeks. Is he going to find the end zone eventually? Maybe he has like that 2-touchdown game, sure. But it's going to be really hard to pick up when it's going to happen because most weeks he's going to get poached by Hurts or someone like Goddard. So I think 14 points here. I'm expecting some points from the Eagles, but I think Miles Sanders probably just another kind of mediocre game.
All right, well, Jules, you're expecting around 23 points from him, so you're expecting him to score for the first time this season today?
Yeah, feeling a little lofty. Why not? I mean, Steve's sitting over here all week saying how the Eagles are like the best team in the NFL and they're going to win again as underdogs.
And they don't need Miles Sanders. That's the beauty.
He caught 4 or 5 targets for almost 40 yards last week. I think he's going to factor in a little bit in the passing game. I think he's going to show well in the running game. I think San Francisco's defense is overrated kind of on all fronts. So I think that if the Eagles have a good shot here as home dogs, and I think that means that Sanders kind of makes the long play that he didn't make last week, and that's the difference. That's the 10 points that's missing between me and the rest of the guys is, a 40-yard touchdown mixed in there.
Not even close.
All right, guys, let's go to wide receiver Julio Jones here. He and the Titans are going to be on the road at Seattle. This man is going to cost you 6-3. Now, in his Tennessee debut last week, just north of 5 points. So 5.9 fantasy points. Your expectations today is going to be what? Let's see it. Show us the whiteboards, dude. So 19.4 from Jules, 19.5 from Steve. Okay. And then just around 15 points for Jeff. Julian, why such high expectations?
Well, I mean, I would call the 5.9 in week 1 probably just south of 6 rather than just north of 5, Emerson. But
that's actually a good point. That's a fair point.
If we want to get into numbers here. But speaking of numbers, yeah, 19.4. He's going to be right in that, I think, high teens range. He's going to pick up the slack here. We're looking at like 6-7 catches, 60, 70, 80 yards, and I think he'll get into the end zone. So between 15 and 20 DraftKings points, something in that range. He's going to bounce back. The targets will be there. It's against Seattle. It's as a sizable road dog in a game that we should see a lot of passing. I think Julio gets right in week 2.
Jules goes 19.4. Steve, you go just north of that to 19.5.
Yeah, Price is Right rule, so I win here. Look, this is the cheapest we've seen Julio Jones ever. This is the cheapest salary we've ever seen him. Before that, $6,600, 2020 against the Saints. Here's what I like about this matchup. Mostly in coverage, he's going to see Trey Flowers, who allowed a 75% catch rate last year on 49 targets. On those targets, an average of 11 yards per reception. Julio Jones is too talented of a wide receiver to be held down like that. We've seen it multiple times when he was with the Falcons. It happened before, but he has a much better quarterback this time around, a much better matchup individually this time around. Look, and in terms of a DFS play, Julio Jones, the buzz on him could not be lower. New team, new scheme. I think he has a breakout game today, 19.5 DraftKings fantasy points.
Jeff,
nice rhyme, bro.
He's cheap, Jeff, but you still don't have as high as expectations for him as these two.
No, I mean, I'm not just throwing out touchdowns randomly like these guys are. Oh, you have a touchdown, you have 3 touchdowns, Julio. No, I mean, I got him a little bit lower. He didn't look good. He didn't look on sync with Ryan Tannehill at all week 1, but the guys made a good point.
In sync, not on sync.
This is not a good, I'll give Buchanan a little bit of credit. This is not a good secondary for Seattle. And the matchup with Trey Flowers is really good. I think that the receptions will be there, but Like, let's not forget, A.J. Brown is the alpha. He wasn't even 100% in week 1. He played over 80% of the snaps. He got the most targets. That's going to happen again. I expect the big plays to go to A.J. Brown, but I do expect Julio to pick it up because this game is very, very fertile for fantasy purposes, and Julio at some point is going to get some catches. So absolutely, I don't think you can pencil him in for like a bust game. He's going to pick it up. I just don't really think he's going to find the end zone because really that's always been the case with Julio. He just, whenever the red zone comes around, he kind of just disappears. So I got him for a little bit less than you guys.
Guys, great work. Fantastic as always. Our class is over. We have run out of time, so apologies there to Darren Waller and Justin Herbert. But it's time for a quick break. Stick around. We are going to get the best primetime picks for Sunday night and Monday night's games coming up. That's next on The Sweat, presented by DraftKings here on the Bally Sports Networks. DraftKings Sportsbook is an official sports betting partner of the NFL, and during Week 2, new customers can bet $1 on any NFL game and get $200 automatically. Plus, new fantasy players can play free for the $1 million top prize when you make your first deposit. Just download any of the apps and use promo code SWEAT.
Welcome back to The Sweat, presented by DraftKings on Bally Sports Networks. I'm Jessie Coffield. They're DraftKings contributors Reed Fowler and Jeff Ulrich, and we are here for primetime picks. So, need your favorite DFS and sportsbook plays for Sunday Night Football and Monday Night Football. That would be primetime. So, Reed, hit me with your favorite DFS play for Chiefs-Ravens.
Yeah, I'm going chalk here. I'm going up top. It's Tyreek Hill. When you take a look at what the Ravens gave up, 240-plus receiving yards to the Raiders receivers. These guys blitz a ton. That is a recipe for disaster when it comes to Patrick Mahomes and a guy like Tyreek Hill. Last season, Tyreek Hill didn't have a huge game, right? He didn't have his week 1 performance of this year, last year against the Ravens. But with that secondary banged up, I really like Tyreek Hill. I think a lot of people are going to go to Travis Kelce with what Waller did against the Ravens last week, so give me Tyreek Hill.
Jeff, favorite DFS play for Chiefs-Ravens?
Oh, I'm taking Reed head on here. I'm going the other direction. Travis Kelce, Jesse. I mean, look, Baltimore, 4th most receptions allowed to the tight end position last year. I mean, they covered Darren Waller for the first part of the game, but, they gave in. Their defense did crack there. And look, Jimmy Smith, Marlon Humphreys could be back here for Baltimore, just putting a bit of a lid on Tyreek Hill. I always like to go back to the other guy for the Chiefs. Tyreek Hill is a big game. You go back to Travis Kelce for the next game because teams tend to just overcompensate for that guy who went off the week before. I think Travis Kelce is the better player, better matchup for him.
All right, Jeff, how about your favorite bet for this Chiefs-Ravens game?
I like sticking with the tight end position, Jesse, but going to the other side, I feel like the receiving prop on Mark Andrews at 50.5 yards is a little bit low here. I mean, again, what do we project this game to be? Baltimore, down. They're obviously 4-point underdogs on the DraftKings Sportsbook. Andrews, 5 targets last week. Not a good opening game, but Baltimore was ahead for that entire game. Not going to be ahead for the entire game against the Chiefs. Marquise Brown banged up. Mark Andrews, this is a better matchup for the tight end position than it is the Ravens wide receivers. I think he goes over 50.5. Again, you look at the game flow. I think it's a good spot to take the over on Mark Andrews.
Reed, what's your favorite bet in this one?
Yeah, Jesse, that was going to be one of mine. Over 4.5 receptions, Jeff, plus 120. If you look at Cleveland's targets, the tight ends for Cleveland, they totaled 10 targets, 7 catches against the Chiefs last week. You could easily see that going to a guy like Mark Andrews. But I'll talk about the game total here and parlaying that, the same game parlay with the Kansas City Chiefs. I know this number has moved 3.5 to 4, but I still like that number, and parlaying it with the under at 54.5 or 55, wherever it lands. I'm okay with either number. If you take a look at the injuries that the Ravens have suffered, yes, we know the running backs are gone, but Ronnie Staley being out is going to be huge. Their PFF passer grade goes from 70 to 64 with Stanley out. Even the run game is more difficult, obviously, with against the Kansas City Chiefs, especially when you have a guy like Jones in the middle there. I just don't see, especially if Kansas City can bottle up Sammy Watkins, who was in their locker room for the last couple of years, I don't see where else you're going to go other than Mark Andrews, guy that we like. But I do think that parlaying that at plus money, it's like plus 270, I think, right now, if you parlay both of these bets together, is a good one. I think the Chiefs take this one.
All right, back to DFS for the Lions-Packers game. What's your favorite play in this one, Reed?
Yeah, it's Marquez Valdes-Scantling. I do like, obviously, getting Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams. Those are high-priced guys. I know you can go to the running backs on the Lions side, but give me MVS. Target share was there. Routes run was there. Air yards were all there. It's just nothing was there for the Green Bay Packers. I think this is a get-right spot. MVS gives you a lot of salary relief from those top guys to get in potentially both of these quarterbacks. I know Jared Goff, look what he did against 49ers. He's not your typical guy that you want in a lineup, but I do think he can get these guys, get the Lions back into it, so to speak, right? But give me MVS. I think the targets are there. I think the price also from the captain or flex spot is very nice.
All right, Jeff, what's your favorite play in this one?
Yeah, I mean, look, the Packers are going to score points. I just don't want to guess where the ball is going through the air, and I don't really want to pay up for Devontae Adams, but Aaron Jones is a lot cheaper than Devontae Adams. You have 3 big guys on Green Bay to choose from. Aaron Jones is the cheapest. Packers with an implied team total sitting right around 30 points. They're going to be a ton of red zone opportunities here for Aaron Jones. And look, we know the Lions defense. They are who we think they are. They allowed a 5th-round draft pick in Eli Mitchell to run all over them last week. We know the ball is going to Aaron Jones. We don't have to guess. Is it going to Scantling? Is it going to Randall Cobb this week? It's going to Aaron Jones on the ground. This is one of the most prolific touchdown scorers in the league over the last 3 years. And if the Packers are projected to score a lot of points, a real good chance of a multi-touchdown game here. I think that the price here on Aaron Jones a little bit too low, so I like him. On the other side, Jesse, I got to throw out Trinity Benson at 1,000. Yes, Matrix fans, a guy named Trinity is playing here. You got to play him. He took over for Tyrell Williams when he was injured. Tyrell Williams out for this week. He's only 1K. If you need salary relief, look to Trinity.
All right, got to speed it up on this last one. Put your sportsbook hat, Jeff. Put it on. What is your favorite bet in this one?
I love this bet. DeAndre Swift over 26.5 receiving yards. He had 10 targets last week. 10 targets, over 26.5 receiving yards. DeAndre Swift, that one's easy.
All right, Reed?
Tonyan anytime touchdown plus 150.
All right, thanks, guys. We still have some Make It Rain picks coming up, but right now, we're going to send it back to Emerson as he catches up with a guy who made some really solid picks last week. That's our guy, Ross Tucker.
All right, we are joined again by former NFL lineman and host of the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, Ross Tucker. It's nice to have you on again, man. Let's dive into this Week 2 slate. Now, I know last week you gave us the Eagles upset of the Falcons, the Browns covering in Kansas City, and the under between Miami and New England. You also gave us a very sharp DFS play, which we will get to a little later in this segment. What did you learn, though, from Week 1 that will carry over, into betting these Week 2 games?
Well, other than just how brilliant I am with my picks on a weekly basis, I guess what I learned in all sincerity, Emerson, home field advantage was not nearly what I thought it would be. I really thought home field advantage, people were not playing in full stadiums last year. So I thought this year, full stadiums, everybody excited, opening week, I thought the scoring would be lower. And I thought the road teams would have more of a struggle having to go to the silent count and not being comfortable with it, familiar with it, since they didn't have to do it last year. But obviously, a lot of underdogs did well. A lot of the road teams did well. So home field advantage was not as significant as I thought it would be.
All right, well, game of the week. This might be Sunday night, a Sunday night showdown between the Chiefs and the Ravens here, Ross. The Chiefs are coming off that win over the Browns. The Ravens coming off that Monday night heartbreaker here, falling to the Raiders in overtime. So do you like the Ravens bouncing back, or do you think they fall to 0-2?
Well, looking forward to it. I'm going to be there calling the game on the radio, so it should be absolutely awesome. I think you got to go with the Ravens to fall 0-2. I mean, they're just dropping like flies, Emerson. It is crazy, the injuries they've had. Now they lose Westry, one of their corners. They already lost Peters for the season. On the offensive line, doesn't look like Ronnie Stanley's going to play. So Villanueva, who was victimized by Max Crosby on Monday night from the Raiders, he'll bump over to left tackle. Patrick McCarry, who's really like a backup center, is going to be playing right tackle. It's not good, man. It's not good. Plus, Patrick Mahomes has the Ravens number. Patrick Mahomes has everybody's number in the month of September. I'll be taking the Chiefs in that one.
All right, well, let's do that thing you like now. Give us your favorite plays of the week. So which spread catches your eye?
You know what? I think I'm going to go with the Eagles. I know we already talked about them, but if I had to pick one, there's some others I like. I kind of like Houston getting all those points against Cleveland. Cleveland's a little bit beat up, but I'm going to take the Eagles. If I have to ride or die with one team, I'm going to ride or die with the Eagles in those points.
All right, this is when we're going to make you feel very, very good about yourself. It is time to give you some big, large, beefy props, because last week we asked you which DFS players people should be targeting on the Week 1 slate. You gave us a gem. Take a listen to this.
When I played DFS, I play to win. I want the money, okay?
Sure.
I'm going to take a quarterback that nobody else is going to take. Tyrod Taylor.
Wow.
Houston Texans, Tyrod Taylor. You know why? Because nobody else is going to take him. I wouldn't be surprised if he runs 5 to 8 times, maybe gets a rushing touchdown. I do not think the Jaguars' defense is very good. I think the Texans have a chip on their shoulder. Everybody thinks they're going to stink. The whole Deshaun Watson situation. I actually think Tyrod comes out and plays well, puts up some numbers, maybe good enough numbers that if you're the only person that has him in your lineup, you cash in on some of the big dollar prizes out there.
Tyrod Taylor, less than 1% owned in the big DK Millie maker with a $5 million prize pool. While the winner did not have him, Ross, he still went over 20 DK fantasy points at just a 5.5 in salary, $5,500. So kudos to you. Go ahead, take your victory lap right now.
Yeah, well, I think my big takeaway is maybe I should stop doing shows like this and just build like my own website where I give out my own picks and just make people millions of dollars. What am I doing talking to you guys and DraftKings and giving out my picks?
Yeah.
Everybody watching this show can make the money. I need to just use this for my own benefit.
Yep.
And just, I'm out here making millionaires. I mean, we got the Champ Series. We got all these ways to be millionaires at DraftKings, and I'm like handing it out like it's candy.
You are great like that. And thank you for giving us peasants here at DraftKings your time every week. But who do you have for us this week? Let's go.
You know what? It's funny. I usually like to have more variety and get more teams involved, more games involved. I'm going with Jalen Hurts. He's still not that expensive. And here's what I think is going to happen. Here's what I'm going with Jalen Hurts, okay? They threw the ball underneath a lot against the Falcons. A lot of short passes. I believe the Niners are going to try to take away the short passes and force Jalen Hurts to prove he can be accurate down the field. Well, I think he can, and I think he will be. And I think there's very real potential with the Niners scheme, but their issues at corner that Jalen Hurts has a big day throwing the football. He's always probably good for maybe a rushing touchdown and some rushing yardage. Give me Jalen Hurts as a guy that's still underpriced, undervalued on the DFS market.
Love it. Love it. Ross Tucker, you always deliver the fireworks with us here at DraftKings. We appreciate your words of wisdom. Jessie Coffield, back to you.
Maybe you should listen to Ross as you take these last few minutes to enter your DraftKings DFS lineups, including this week's featured contest, DFS contest, the 4.5 million Fantasy Football Millionaire. So for just a $20 entry fee, take a shot at $1 million first prize that will also get you a seat into the DraftKings Tournament of Champions, which will take place at the end of the season, and give you an opportunity at yet another $1 million prize. That's all part of the 4.5 million in total prizes. So go check out that contest in the DraftKings lobby. All right, let's send it back to Emerson at the desk as he's joined by Steve, Reed, and Julian to take this one home.
Thanks so much, Jesse. Appreciate it. Last minute DFS takes here, guys, for the Sunday slate. So, Reed, what are maybe some things you are rethinking right now? A few minutes out of lock.
Yeah, so from a totality standpoint, guys that were chalk last week, I think is something that you want to potentially go back to this week, especially if they present value. Guy like Marquez Callaway is someone that I'm fairly interested in. Look, he's more expensive than he was last week at $4,200. But at a much lower roster percentage projected of what he was in week one. And he gets a Carolina defense that gave up 2 touchdowns to Zach Wilson, Steve Buchanan's favorite quarterback, to Corey Davis, right? Yeah. So Corey Davis can get 2 touchdowns. A guy like Marquez Callaway, if he's that #1 target with the Saints, and the Saints can do anything, even half of what they did last week against Green Bay, I think someone like a guy like Callaway, who's going to be much lesser owned, but present more value, is something that I'm reconsidering getting more of those type of guys in my lineup.
He's coming at you. I didn't know this was the hot take segment.
Yeah, it's not the hot take segment. That's okay. I'll let him have that punch because I get all the jabs in. Here's what I'm thinking about on this slate. Some of the biggest names in football haven't even been brought up in this show. Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry. I feel like a lot of people are going to be paying down at the running back position, which is totally fine because there's a lot of guys you want to pay up for, especially at wide receiver, especially at quarterback. But in those tournaments, those massive field tournaments, I think it's worth paying up for some of those running backs because you're probably going to get them at extremely low ownership. Someone like McCaffrey and Kamara, who are facing each other, by the way, could be a lot of points scored in that game. They're great for PPR purposes, which of course the DraftKings website is. So if you want to be a little bit different, especially in tournaments, I think paying up for some of those running backs is the way to go on this slate.
Jules, any last minute advice, last minute changes you're going to consider?
Yeah, no real argument from me on those guys. I like the takes. Go back to the week 1 chalk that didn't work. People love to just throw it away because it doesn't work in week 1. And running back, is going to be like a low balance position. So going for the studs at lower ownership, I agree with Steve there. I'm going to take a look at the wide receiver position, where for cash games we have kind of this chalk of Keenan Allen, of CeeDee Lamb, of Cooper Kupp, who are all 6 to 7K. I think you can be different with some really good guys there. Steve and I both had Julio Jones at 20 DraftKings points, essentially. He's in that neighborhood. Antonio Brown was targeted all the time by Tom Brady on some bombs. He's in that neighborhood against Atlanta. Like, there are other guys that aren't chalk at wide receiver in that 6 to 7K range that I think are really good tournament pivots.
All right, let's do some Make It Rain picks. We have 2 minutes left in the show. This is when you guys give your favorite DFS play on this week 2 slate. It's going to make it rain cash for the people at home. Go ahead.
Yeah, let's start with Nick Chubb. Obviously, the Browns are massive favorites in this one. I think 13.5 at the last check. They're going to let Chubb run the ball. The Texans were the worst run defense in the league last year. Most rushing yards allowed, most rushing touchdowns allowed. Chubb should get in the end zone. He should rack up those yards. Nick Chubb, my guy this week.
Sweet T. Fowler, let me get that pick.
Keenan Allen, $7,000. When he's at home in the 7 games that he played, he amassed a lot of targets, a lot of yards, and a lot of PPR points. Don't make it too difficult. Keep it simple. Give me Keenan Allen.
Jules, your Make It Rain pick is who?
Yeah, so when I was building my cash lineup, the last guy I wanted to fit that I couldn't fit was Chase Edmonds. Therefore, he's going to be my Make It Rain pick because if people are going to be off of him, not find a way to make him fit, I think it's a really great spot for him at $4,900. He was involved in the passing game last week for the Cardinals. He got more touches in the running game than we're generally used to. I think people thought James Conner would be more involved. So if we're going to get that against Minnesota, who gave up a ton to Joe Mixon on the ground last week, I think Chase Edmonds is in a sneaky good spot and is overshadowed by a lot of guys in the same ballpark.
And Minnesota's defense a little bit banged up. Everson Griffin not in. Yep. Eric Kendricks has been a little questionable this week, so
unfortunate car accident taking out multiple
Yeah.
Vikings defenders.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we're expecting a big day out of running backs. It kind of feels like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah,
And
and
he
look,
took a receiver, but
yeah, I mean, like the Chase Edmonds too.
Yeah.
When you saw what happened with James Conner, he got a James. Hold on, James Conner
This
got
guy.
James
Fight
Conner
this guy
got a
after the
lot of
show.
attempts towards the end of that game. So I like the Chase Edmonds call.
All right, we got to go. Producer Tom says Julian has ruined everything.
Darn.
Goodbye,
Nothing new
everybody. This show we actually air Monday through Friday at 11 o'clock Eastern Time on YouTube and Twitch. See you next week, Bally.
What?